Boy here. Hey, normally I don't try to get in the middle of a lot of different political or business issues and things on this channel because, I'm focusing on things as a hobbyist and enthusiast, for firearms and also, if I could share any travel things or stuff like that, that was my original intent with this channel. But there's something that is that it's kind of an important topic right now, I believe, and I see several different things, different channels, kind of bringing it up. One in particular, when I started seeing it on Guns and American Handgunner podcast with I think it's Brent and Roy. It's pretty important. Of course, Yankee Marshall's been chatting about it. Probably a couple of other folks around the internet. And one of the things it's about is this whole thing about Beretta trying to do a hostile takeover of Ruger. And I think, most of us as American owners of handguns or firearms enthusiasts, right now, we have our favorites, and no doubt, and I like Smith and Wesson too, and some of the many of the others, Colt, and so forth, and of course, CZ acquired Colt. That was probably one of those situations where it was a good thing, at least from my perspective, but because they needed the support of that, and Colt has struggled at different times. I like Colt firearms a lot, but they have struggled at different times. And then we all know Smith & Wesson's been around. It's had its ups and downs, and sometimes, there's maybe some, quality control issues there, but I think they're trying to, work things out. Ruger, I haven't really had, any kind of issues with those that I've even had with a couple Smith & Wessons and stuff like that. And it's just disappointing to me to think that somebody comes in, especially a European company, comes in. I know Beretta's been making firearms for 500 years. I think it's about 500 years or somewhere around there. But it disturbs me to think that they can say, well, we're not going to buy it or partner with them. We're just going to take it over. And I think this does not sit well in the gullet of many of us American gun owners. That's not going to go well with us, and it's really sad to think that the mentality is such that it's like, oh yeah, we can just do that. That's a good business decision for us, and I think in some ways it probably has to do with that their market penetration probably isn't as good as they'd like it to be. I mean, some of us have, many of us have, Beretta, M9s, 92s of various varieties, Cheetahs are the old ones, maybe the new ones, the Tomcats, the 30-32, and the Tomcats and the 32 variety and ACP and, 22 LR ones and stuff like that. But and they make nice other handguns too. I think with like the PX4 and some of those, some people may like the APX, but it's hard for me to accept the idea that, well, we're going to come in there and we're going to get you guys all straightened out correctly. Is kind of the feeling I get from it. It's just my observation to think that we finally get, and I'll tell you, this is a Henry, okay, this is not a Marlin, but I haven't ever found a Marlin that I found a couple of them that I liked, but they weren't quite as clean as I would have liked them with the last company that owned them. But I have the goal of wanting to buy one eventually. And we finally get Ruger's got Marlin, and I think they're getting it, all straightened out, and we're all kind of happy about that. But to think that they might want a way to get into that market because, they don't feel like they're competitive with, I don't know, Pedersoli, Uberti, Chiappa, Pieta, the different other Italian gun manufacturers for the Wild West. I think that might be some of their motivation of it. Or to think that somehow in their minds, they're going to take something like this. Now, this is and there's no bullets in here, and it's empty and all that good stuff. my Langdon 92G, Elite Langdon Tactical, Beretta 92, that they think that they can take something like this, or they're thinking around something like this, and replace it something like this, which also is unloaded for your benefit and the benefit of YouTube. Replace something in American heritage, a really well manufactured quality firearm that represents our history and things, and think that maybe they've got better ideas than a company that was founded on the idea of providing affordable handguns, in my understanding, with I think Bill Ruger, and they founded it, and the ones they started making. And I think if you'll watch some of the folks like Brian Pierce and others, they'll talk about why the company came into being and the folks that influenced it. To think that they are going to do that when these guns are definitely not affordable. For most of us, this is one of my most expensive guns I have. This here is a reasonably priced firearm for what it's used for. And I'm just a little disappointed. So that's kind of my rant. Reed Desert Boy doesn't usually get up on the platform. But, Beretta, just let Ruger do what they're doing. They seem to be doing okay from my viewpoint and my experience with them. I don't know about others, but I'm a little disappointed. So if you got any comments on that, why don't you share that? Because I think the more that they see these kind of things, they'll realize it doesn't really matter how many lawyers they got. When it comes down to it, we'll all make the decision with our wallets on what we think about what happens. So anyway, as Reed Desert Boy always says, be safe out there, whatever you're doing. And if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye now.